artwork, if you couldn't see it, if you're just listening, the artwork is so good and the story is really good. So I encourage you to head over to dailywire.com, subscribe, watch both the first and second seasons of Another Kingdom. So much to get to. Who do we thank first for this Brett Kavanaugh thing? And I'm actually going to contradict conservative orthodoxy. But first, let me make a little money, honey. What's more conservative than that? ExpressVPN. With all the recent news about online security breaches, it's hard not to worry about where your data goes. Making an online purchase or simply accessing your email could put your private information at risk. We've just found out that China has been spying in all of our technology, in the biggest servers in the country. Seriously, you would be insane to even check your email if you're not using a VPN. You're being tracked by social media sites, marketing companies, your mobile and internet provider. Use ExpressVPN, protect your privacy. It secures and anonymizes your internet browsing by encrypting your data and hiding your public IP address. Protect yourself with ExpressVPN. Costs less than $7 a month. Protect your online activity today. Find out how you can get 3 months free at expressvpn.com/Michael, MICHAEL, EXPRESSVPN.com/Michael, MICHAEL. That is 3 months free with a 1-year package. Visit expressvpn.com/Michael to learn more and protect your privacy. I know what you're thinking, conservatives. You're thinking conservatives are supposed to be dour, we're supposed to be pessimistic, we're supposed to be sad, we're always supposed to be angry and upset, because the culture's falling away and the West is decaying. But not today. Not today. With the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh, it is hard to imagine how this could have turned out any better than it did. It just turned out so well. Didn't always have to. Pretty reckless game, pretty risky. Jeff Flake could have screwed it all up for us, could have wrecked the Supreme Court, wrecked our electoral chances, but that's not how it worked out. So who can we thank for this? Who can we thank for being the conscience of a conservative and being the backbone of the GOP? Susan Collins, Lindsey Graham, cocaine Mitch McConnell, and Donald Trump. If you had told me 3 years ago that the conscience of a conservative would be, certainly Trump, who knew that Trump was going to be a Republican, Susan Collins, Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, I would have laughed in your face, but they stood up. They were the backbone of the GOP. And actually the GOP's moral conscience here by saying, no, we're not going to let you destroy Brett Kavanaugh. We're not going to let you assassinate his character based on nothing, based on less than nothing, based on smears that have fallen apart time and time again. We're not going to let you do it. And Susan Collins articulated this beautifully in a speech that I hope the entire country was watching. Probably they won't, because she really came into the room and articulated what was so wrong with those proceedings.
I found her testimony to be sincere, painful, and compelling. I believe that she is a survivor of a sexual assault. Nevertheless, the 4 witnesses she named could not corroborate any of the events of that evening gathering. I do not believe that the claims such as these need to be proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Nevertheless, fairness would dictate that the claims at least should meet a threshold of more likely than not.
Duh. Yeah, of course. I mean, thank you for putting it that way. It's true. It's not a criminal proceeding, although the Democrats certainly were treating it as one. So sure, it doesn't need to be beyond a reasonable doubt, but at least more likely than not. At least the accusers should try to keep their stories straight for more than 5 minutes at a time, not get caught in a multitude of lies. Yeah, of course you shouldn't ruin a man's career with a decade of unquestioned integrity as a federal judge, before that staff secretary to the president, deputy independent counsel under the Starr investigation. The guy has an unimpeachable track record. You don't get to ruin that guy's life just 'cause you want to. So we have to thank Susan Collins. We also have to thank the Democrats who filibustered Neil Gorsuch, because this caused Cocaine Mitch to go nuclear on Neil Gorsuch. People forget this. They get a little confused on what the nuclear option means, where, the nuclear option was first invoked by Harry Reid. He invoked it in 2013 because he wanted to ram through more of Barack Obama's judges at the lower levels. So he said, nope, we no longer need a 60-vote majority to confirm judges. We're going to bring that down to a simple majority. As long as you get a simple majority, that's fine. We can confirm the judges. And for years, senators had talked about doing this, but they always backed away because they knew that when they're out of power, this is a very bad thing. But Harry Reid said, I don't care. I'm ramming Obama's judges through. That's fine. Cocaine Mitch, what are your thoughts on that?
Once again, Senate Democrats are threatening to break the rules of the Senate, in order to change the rules of the Senate. And over what? Over what? Over a court that doesn't even have enough work to do? The majority leader promised, over and over again, that he wouldn't break the rules of the Senate in order to change them. If you want to play games, set yet another precedent that you'll no doubt come to regret. Say to my friends on the other side of the aisle, you'll regret this, and you may regret it a lot sooner than you think.
You're gonna regret it, my little friends on the other side of the aisle. You're gonna regret it, my little friends, a lot sooner than you think. A lot sooner, ha, hoo-ha. That's Cocaine Mitch McConnell in 2013. Prophetic words, totally prophetic words, because then when it came up with Neil Gorsuch, don't forget, a lot of Democrats during this Kavanaugh circus have said, well, look, Kavanaugh's just a bad guy. Look, we weren't this bad about Neil Gorsuch. First of all, yes, you were. You tried to filibuster him. But second of all, the reason they didn't create a hullabaloo and accuse him of gang rape in the 80s is because Neil Gorsuch was replacing Scalia. He was replacing the originalist judge, so it didn't swing the balance of the court. Who knows, actually, if Gorsuch is as rock-ribbed as Scalia? Time will tell. So it didn't change the balance of the court. Now that you're replacing Anthony Kennedy, the swing vote, who sided with the left of the court on very important matters, like the gay marriage decision of Obergefell, for example, when you're replacing that guy, it's much different because then you'll actually have a conservative majority, an originalist majority on the court. So they went after them. They go after Gorsuch. They filibuster Gorsuch. Mitch McConnell says, well, remember when I said that you were going to regret this sooner than you think? Now it's sooner than you think. So he did it. He went nuclear for Supreme Court nominees, and that's how we were able to get Judge Kavanaugh through. It's a great turn of events for us that actually didn't hinge on this nomination. It was on the last one. So that's great. We can thank the Democrats who filibustered too. We should also not forget, by the way, future Democratic presidential nominee, Michael Avenatti. The creepy porn lawyer. The creepy porn lawyer played an integral role in this because he exposed the Democrat strategy of just finding random, unfalsifiable, unverifiable allegations from 50,000 years ago. He exposed it because he did it in his Avenatti way. Dianne Feinstein, Deborah Katz, they were a little more subtle when they dragged up Christine Ford, and at the 11th hour after the hearings were over, leaked her complaint to the Senate Judiciary Committee. They were a little more subtle. Christine Ford is a more subtle character. When it got to Julie Swetnick, Michael Avenatti's client, she's accusing him of being like a leather daddy, gang rapist, crime boss in the 80s. That one seems so ridiculous. The New York Times agrees. They wrote, quote, the tide seemed to turn, oddly enough, when a third woman emerged with even more extreme allegations. Michael Avenatti, a brash and media-savvy California lawyer who has been careening from one Trump administration brushfire to another, produced a statement from a woman alleging that Judge Kavanaugh in high school attended parties where women were gang raped. The woman, Julie Swetnick, said she herself was gang raped at one such party, though not by the judge. And the woman kept going to the parties for some reason. Not a very smart woman, apparently, if any of those allegations had even the whiff of truth to them, which obviously they do not. Alan Dershowitz agrees with this. Famed liberal lawyer Alan Dershowitz, he tweeted this out. He said, Kavanaugh owes an enormous debt to Michael Avenatti, who may have turned the tide in his favor by diluting Ford's compelling accusation with an implausible story. Now, he uses that phrase, compelling allegation. I'm not convinced by that. I don't really see why the allegation is compelling. It came after 30 years of silence and into a vague allegation 6 years ago, the first time Kavanaugh's name was floated, and then the story changed a few different times. By the time she wrote to Dianne Feinstein, it changed when she took the polygraph, it changed when she talked to the Washington Post. It was refuted by every person that she claims was there, including her lifelong friend Leland Kaiser, a lady, Lady Leland Kaiser. It's not just the guys here. A woman refuted her claims too. So I don't really think it's compelling at all, and it changed a lot. Nevertheless, he's right. It was a much more subtle accusation. So you got to give credit where credit is due, and thank Mr. Avenatti for that. The other group that you have to thank, the other incident that you have to thank, is Ford's changing story. Because if Ford was able to keep her story straight, this probably would have been a lot stronger. Even though it was 36 years after the fact, even though she'd never told anybody about it, if she could have kept the story straight, it probably would have been stronger. But she couldn't keep her story straight. Initially, it was 4 boys in the room. Then it was 2 boys in the room. Then there were 4 people there. Then 5, 6, 7 people there. Then she named all the people. They refuted her. So then she said, okay, well, there was another person who I forget. She couldn't say who drove her there. She couldn't say who drove her home. And then she said she couldn't testify in Washington because she was afraid of flying. And she was afraid of flying because of confined spaces, the fear of confined spaces stemming from this incident 36 years ago. Then it turns out she flies all over the place. Flies to French Polynesia, flies to Hawaii, flies to New Hampshire, flies all over. So that doesn't sound good. An ex-boyfriend of hers came out and said they used to fly in propeller planes in Hawaii, and she never expressed a fear of flying ever. So that part fell apart as well. Then she says the polygraph test was this long test. She told her whole life story. She was so nervous about it. Then we find out she knows a lot about polygraph tests, and the polygraph she took was only 2 questions, and she volunteered to take it, and her team paid the polygraph examiner to give the test. That also didn't hold up very well. Then the one I think that finally cracked it was she said, I had a second door installed on my home when we renovated it because I was so afraid of confined spaces stemming from this 36-year-old allegation. And this came up during a 2012 marriage counseling session. Turns out she filed to get the second door in 2008, 4 years earlier, for a marriage counseling office for a room that she rented out to Google interns and to college students. Story just fell apart, which is why I disagree with Professor Dershowitz. I don't find it compelling at all. But if that story hadn't fallen apart, I think you'd still see the Democrats focusing on her. They wouldn't have started talking about Brett Kavanaugh, throwing ice at a New Haven bar. So the other thing that's a little weird about this now, and really diminishes Ford's credibility, is she said she's not going to pursue her charges any further. Initially she said Brett Kavanaugh not only groped her, but tried to rape her. And not only tried to rape her, but almost killed her. And now she says, no, now he's on the court, I don't care. That's a little strange, isn't it? And you can impeach a judge. Why doesn't she want to impeach the judge? Her lawyer, Deborah Katz, said that she did not want the judge impeached. That's a little strange, isn't it? I wonder why that is. The reason that she doesn't want the judge impeached is because now it's not politically advantageous. That's why. What's the advantage now to doing it? He got through, he managed to squeak through. She doesn't want any more spotlight on her changing story, so now it's over. And I think Democrats realize that it's killing them in the polls, so they think that they have to move on from this. I hope forever we can retire the word credible, for like at least the next 6 months or so. But what this really gets to, this was highlighted by a writer for the Colbert Show, Ariel Dumas, is they don't care whether Christine Ford's story is true. Which story would be true? I don't know. They don't care about some story from when he was at Yale and he allegedly whipped it out at a party that other people there refute. They don't care about Julie Swetnick, certainly. They don't care about any of that. What they wanted to do is ruin his life. And hand it to Ariel Dumas, the writer for the Colbert Show. She said, quote, "Whatever happens, I'm just glad we ruined Brett Kavanaugh's life." Because that's all they wanted to do. That's all they were after. They didn't like him. They didn't like him because it was an originalist. He's an originalist judge. He's going to change the balance of the court. They tried all these different tactics. They finally called him a rapist and a near killer and a this and a that, and at least they ruined his life. And that's what they were really after, to ruin this guy's life. For them, it reminds me of the Godfather, when they talk about killing and murder. This is the Michael Corleone theory of judicial confirmations. Mr. Corleone, what are your thoughts?
It's not personal, Sonny. It's strictly business.
It's not personal, Brett. It's not personal. That's my father, Brett. That's not me. Strictly business. In The Godfather Part 2, Hyman Roth, the Lee Strasberg, the Jewish gangster, is there. He said, "This is the business we've chosen." They treat it like business. And then the minute that the deal is over, they move on. So, oh, okay, sorry we ruined your life, but it's business. We're not going to pursue these charges any further. We're not going to try to impeach you. It's just business. Yeah, right, exactly. It's just business. It's just shallow, hackish, political business. Pretty sad. The question you have to ask yourself here is this the kind of politics that you want? Do you want the kind of government where anybody who's put up for anything has their lives ruined? They have to either be squeaky clean, or even if they are squeaky clean, they're still not good enough. They're still, if you're Mitt Romney, you're a dog killer, gay bashing, whatever. And if you're Brett Kavanaugh, who's lived an unimpeachable life, then you just become a rapist because of fantasies concocted out of whole cloth. Do you really want this kind of politics? No. I might suggest a détente. Because what you get in this politics is only the worst people. It's only people who feel no shame. This is why Bill Clinton was so successful in politics, is the Clintons are immune from shame. They cannot feel it. So they accuse Bill Clinton of, having sexual affairs in the Oval Office. He says, "I'm telling you, I did not have sexual relations with that woman." What was it, a month later, 2 months later, 5 seconds after he says that to the American people, he sits down in that next press conference. He said, "Look, I might have had some sexual relations with her, but I'm telling you the truth now." And he can do that because he feels no shame. Actually, this is an advantage sometimes when it works with Republican candidates. President Trump ran on this. He said, "Yep, I slept with a ton of women who weren't my wife. Sleeping with my friends' wives is one of the highlights of life. And I'm a playboy, billionaire, don't care, don't worry about you." And it really makes you immune from attacks because they try to attack you. And he said, "Yeah, right. I wrote about that in my book." Barack Obama did this in his first book, The Dreams from My Father. He says, "Yeah, I did a bunch of coke, I did a bunch of blow, I smoked a lot of pot, I ate a bunch of dogs in Indonesia." I mean, he outlays it pretty clearly. He says he palled around with communists, and by the end of the book, because he's exposed everything to you, you're not afraid of him, because you see him, and you see he's not an intimidating guy. Certainly Barack Obama's not an intimidating guy, and so you don't fear him anymore. But you get bad people this way. It would be nice if we could have a little bit more of, Washington, Hamilton. I'd enjoy that. James Madison, John Adams. But you don't get that in a politics where you are going to truly ruin somebody's life. I'm not letting the press off the hook for their treatment of Democrats over the years, where they would treat the Democrats way nicer. They'd cover up for Democrats. It was truly a conspiracy. But if you could have a little bit of an agreement between the Republicans and the Democrats to say certain things are off limits, school rumors in yearbooks, that's off limits. If you might have a more respectable politics, just a suggestion. But that's not what you're going to get. So you're only going to get people who are shameless, who are know-nothings, who have nothing to lose, which of course brings us to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'm stealing Steve Hayward's line. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She went on MSNBC over the weekend to give her agenda if she is elected to Congress. And I don't think I could have said it any better myself. Take it away, Alexandria.
You're going at there's a time where people were talking about how it's broken and it's so polarized, both of which I think are true. And you're also coming really as an outsider at a moment where I think people are watching what happened today and want to storm the gates, and you're going to actually do that. So what?
Oh, all right. I guess we lost Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Let me see if I can do an impression of her answer. "Well, when I'm going to get to Congress, I'm probably almost quoting verbatim, by the way. "We need an organizer in Congress because organizers organize people, and the people need to be organized if we're going to have any organization in our government. And that's how we're going to come together, and we're going to organize by an organizer, and we're going to move forward or in an organized fashion." I don't know. She answered nothing. She didn't say what did she say? Zero. But this is why the Democrats have to revert to brutal passions, sex and race, basically, and say, "Yeah, we have the same skin color, vote for me." Yeah, we have the same genitals. Vote for me. Well, you have to because well, grunt, grunt, grunt. It's because they aren't making any arguments. They're not advancing any agenda other than the increase of their own power, which is why they're socialists. Socialism is just taking power away from people and giving it to the government. And they say, get me, 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 me. They can't make an argument for that. You can't make an argument to somebody to give away all of their freedom and property, right? You have to appeal to these base, brutal passions. And it's really sad because there isn't a public debate being had about socialism. It's just the identity politics and the intersectional politics of the left. And this brings us to not the dumbest article on the internet today. This actually transcends that. This is a little higher than that. This is the dumbest article on the internet this month. The award goes to Alexis Grenell from the New York Times. The column is White Women. After a confirmation process where women all but, white women come get your people. That white women come get your people is the head of it. The too long didn't read is that white women are the cause of all the problems in the world. Here's how she begins. After a confirmation process where women all but slit their wrists, letting their stories of sexual trauma run like rivers of blood through the Capitol, the Senate still voted to confirm Judge Brett Kavanaugh. And I wonder why men call them hysterical. I wonder why they almost slit their wrists in the trauma of blood. I think what you mean is that George Soros's paid protesters ran and shrieked throughout the Capitol like a bunch of hysterical children. She goes on. Alexis goes on. With the exception of Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, all the women in the Republican conference caved, including Senator Susan Collins of Maine, who held out till the bitter end. These women are gender traitors, to borrow a term from the dystopian TV series The Handmaid's Tale. This, by the way, they can only reference trashy modern TV shows because they don't know anything about literature or history or philosophy. So this is why people, when they're discussing myth these days, they can only ever talk about Harry Potter and Star Wars. That's all millennials ever talk. They say, you're like Dumbledore. I don't know. I haven't read Harry Potter since I was 9. But that's all they can reference because they don't have any other cultural inheritance to draw on. So she says, to borrow a term from The Handmaid's Tale, to borrow a term from Family Guy, I don't know, you're talking about some trash TV. Get over you. Or read a book. Read a book, lady, and then, you can bring out that cultural inheritance. She goes on. They've made standing by the patriarchy, standing against the patriarchy, or by the patriarchy, a full-time job. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, whose response to a woman telling him she was raped was, "I'm sorry, call the cops." So the patriarchy thing, we'll get to that in a minute. But the Lindsey Graham, someone comes up to him and says, I was raped. What do you expect him to say? What should he say? You should call the cops. That's a horrible crime. That's a heinous crime. You should go to the cops. If you go, my sister was murdered. Yeah, have you told the cops about that? They should investigate that. Maybe prosecute the guy who did it. Find the guy who did it. But they're just using it. They're just using the claim of sexual assault, which has been defined down to almost nothing at this point. An unwanted kiss is a sexual assault. Some guy comes up to you at a bar and you're talking and he tries to kiss you. That's a sexual assault by some definitions. And they're just trying to use that, to weaponize that, to borrow the left's term, to tell Republicans to shut up and to keep originalists off the court. Really pathetic. The article concludes, recently, Ms. Conway even weaponized, I told you there's that word, her own alleged sexual assault in service of her boss by discouraging women from feeling empathy with Christine Blasey Ford or anger at Judge Kavanaugh. She's attacking Kellyanne Conway, advisor to the president, for doing exactly the same thing that the left has been doing. And it seems like she's not even believing her, or she's judging her skeptically about this. Really, really dumb column it's just like the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York Times columns, which is, I can't make an argument, I can't advance an argument, I'm relying on facts that simply are not so, I'm relying on fantasies, so I am just going to appeal to brutal instincts and passions. Me, woman, you, woman. Bad men. Me, swarthy, you, swarthy. Us, white, bad. I mean, that's basically the argument that they're making, and it's all of the sophistication of people whose greatest cultural achievement that they can draw on is The Handmaid's Tale. And by the way, Bette Midler, the performer, the singer, the actress Bette Midler, really highlighted this very well last week when she tweeted out a quote from one of the worst John Lennon songs. She said, "Women are the N-word of the world. Women are the N-word of the world." This is from one of the worst John Lennon songs that he wrote with Yoko Ono. And the song goes, "Woman is the N-word of the world. Yes, she is. Think about it." If your second line is "think about it," your first line isn't that good. No, man, but just think about it. So that's her. Women are the N-word of the world, raped, beaten, enslaved, married off, worked like dumb animals, denied education and inheritance, enduring the pain and danger of childbirth and life in silence for thousands of years. They're the most disrespected creatures on earth. But we know that those numbers aren't so. We know that that isn't true. I think we talked about this a few days ago. More men are raped in the United States than women. Men are more likely to suffer fatal injuries on the job. Men are much more likely to kill themselves, 3.5 times more likely, I think. It is true that women are supposed to be the only ones to give childbirth, but don't forget Planned Parenthood now says that some men have uteruses. So I don't know, maybe men can do that too now. It's just base passions that are totally ignorant of reality. There are lies, damned lies in statistics. Sometimes statistics tell you something about the truth, and this is lies versus statistics. So obviously that isn't a good argument going into November. Obviously that case isn't going to work. The problem runs so much deeper than just politics, though. It runs so much deeper than just politics or culture. Oh, I'm going to have to say goodbye to Facebook and YouTube. But we've got to talk about one of the greatest stories of the last 6 months. It's almost as good as Brett Kavanaugh being confirmed to the Supreme Court, which is that grievance studies, women's studies and African American studies and this studies and that studies, these hoaxers were able to get journals, serious academic journals, to publish their hoax articles just using random left-wing buzzwords. And they were able to get them through because grievance studies are a farce, and most of university campuses are farcical at this point. We will get to some of the highlights of that. Then we got to talk about how great Christopher Columbus is. But only if you go to dailywire.com. If you're on Facebook and YouTube, head on over. You got to do it. Plus, now you get another kingdom out of it. This is a good deal. You get to hear another kingdom and see another kingdom days and days early. Go to dailywire.com. Why? You get all the shows. You get to ask questions in the mailbag. You get to ask questions in the conversation. Here it is. Here it is, folks. This is going to be a long beach week if you don't have a Leftist Tears tumbler. This is going to be, PJ and Squee are going to be the only ones who survive when you drown in those leftist tears that have been unleashed. Because, by the way, we're just celebrating today that the guy got on the court. What happens when, some Chevron deference cases come up? Ooh, is that not sexy enough for you? How about some cases that get to the legality and constitutionality of abortion? What happens then? Are you just going, You're going to lift 100 leftist tears tumbler kegs over your head in celebration of this wonderful achievement of ours, of this wonderful freaking achievement. It's going to be really, really good. Go to dailywire.com. We'll be right back with a lot more and a celebration of Christopher Columbus.